on, guys, stand up. Let's hear a roar. Come on, left side, roar it out. Right side, roar it out. Come on, left side again, roar it out. Right side, roar it out. Online, roar it out. Come on, let's hear you. I love it. I love it. Wow, the energy in here. I love this energy. And energy is a funny thing, right? Because it's like this invisible boxer. We're chasing it all the time. We know when it's here. We can feel it. But it feels like we're constantly after it. And for me, I became obsessed with the body at a young age. 13 years old, my father said to me, son, talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And forever, I was like, I need to be the most consistent version of me. And that started my journey. How do I become the most consistent version? How do I take over and take ownership of my body? And so I was this kid who was starting to read medical journals at 13 years old. I was wearing heart rate monitors and brain sensors and pulse oximeters to go to sleep, tracking all this information while everybody else was playing video games and reading comic books. And as my journey continued, it took me to my educational career. And I still remember my graduate and postgraduate professors, as soon as they'd see, oh, Justin's here in class, they're like, oh my gosh, no. Because he'd come up and I'd ask questions. They're like, man, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I've never even heard of HRV. The cellular and genetic integration altogether, I really don't understand it, but keep going. And so as I continued to kind of lean in there, I was like, how is this actually happening? How can these professors who are teaching us things not know how complete the body can actually be? That was right after that, I went and started to have these stomach issues. And terrible, terrible stomach aches all the time. I went to naturopaths, doctors, as many as you can think of, and they all told me I was in perfect bill of health. Everything was great. And the one naturopath told me, hey, you're allergic to everything under the sun. You can eat like these 10 foods. And it literally came down to I was only able to eat soup and smoothies. And I was like, this can't be okay. I was working out in Chicago one day, and down I go. Just pass right out. And so I went to the doctors and I said, hey, I need you guys to run these tests. And they're like, no, we just don't do that. I was like, no, you have to run these tests. So I went in, they ran a couple things, got a colonoscopy as well. And the doctor comes back a day later, he goes, I am so sorry. You would not have made it to your next birthday. They found 7 polyps the size of my thumb. And all of a sudden, I felt amazing. And then I got my dream job in the NHL, looking after the best players in the world. And I'm like, finally, the best league in the world, the best players in the world. We must all of a sudden have a place where everything makes sense. And we're pulling data, we're getting all the information that we need. We've got the players wearing heart rate monitors, we've got all this testing at the beginning of the season, but yet everybody was supplemented the same, everybody ate the same, everybody trained the same, everybody recovered the same, and I couldn't understand why. And I'm here to tell you that each one of you deserves to understand what your body needs. Each one of you deserves to understand what you need in order to perform optimally. We were made unique. We were made in the image of our Creator, and that image is not mediocre. That image of greatness. And in order for us to lean in, we have to understand what we have to do for us. Play our game, not everybody else's game. So over the course of today, we're going to go and understand what is true health. Ultimately, what is the language of our body? How can we own our different, what we require? And then how do we run our body like a business? And so the first thing I always ask is, what is health? What makes up true health? And so if we write this in the middle, we got health right here. Typically we hear, we've got intermittent fasting. Well, then we hear from somebody, you should eat only meat. And then it's, oh, you should eat only vegetables. And then it's like, well, I've got my sauna. And then, no, you got a cold tub every single day. And then, no, I'm going to go and do my HIIT workouts, No, you shouldn't do HIIT. You should do long, slow distance workouts. No, you don't do cardio. You do weight training. And then it's, oh, well, you should get 15 hours of sleep every night. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. How am I supposed to sleep 15 hours? Well, no, you can get naps in the day. Well, no, you definitely shouldn't nap. And it all of a sudden becomes this maze. And we don't actually know where we are. We get lost. I'm born and raised in Edmonton, home of West Edmonton Mall, biggest mall in North America. And I went back about a few years ago, and it's like 18 phases. It's like a maze in there. It's got a ice rink, amusement park, a water park, a golf course. And when I drove up, I parked my car right outside of the water park, D3. It was green. And I went in, I spent my day in there, and as I'm coming back out, I'm like, man, I don't know how to get back to my car. And as I started to take left turns and right turns and left turns and right turns, I ended up walking, and I found this map. And what's the key when I found this map? It's exactly it, that red dot that says you are here. And that's the same thing that we end up with our health. We end up in this tornado, and we don't know what to do. We know where we want to go. We know what energy looks like. We've felt it. We know how we want to feel every single day, but we don't know where we are. And because we don't know where we are, we end up in this place called the fake health continuum. On the left side, you've got death and disease. And on the right side, you've got true health. And then there's this big space in the middle called fake health. Disease-free, but symptom-full. Anxiety, can't sleep, stomach aches, headaches, insomnia. That's a place where all of us have living. And we aren't able to understand how do we get into this true health space. Because we're winding up in this cyclone that we can't truly figure out where we are. And so we're taking left turns, right turns. We're trying what our friends are doing. We're trying what our husbands are doing. We're trying what our cousin told us to do because it worked for them. But yet we haven't figured out what we need because we don't know where we are. And so if we take a look at things, there's 4 things that we need for life. Okay, 4 things only. Air, water, food, and sleep. Really pretty simple. But there was a Harvard study that was done, a longitudinal study, and it took a look at what we needed for true longevity, true health. There's oxygen efficiency, an increase in sleep quality, an increase in average HRV, and a steady blood glucose. If we were able to optimize those 4 things in anybody's life, you increased your average lifespan by 10 years. For the first time in 70 years, in 2021, we saw a drop in the average lifespan of both men and women. Currently, they're 79 years old for women and 73 for men. That means if we were able to optimize these 4 things, we could live at 89 and 83. I don't know about you, but I would love to have the richness of life at the end for another 10 years. I would love the richness of life in order to leave on and move forward in a positive, powerful way. And the thing that nobody's talking about is even if you take a look at some of these things, in steady blood glucose, Alzheimer's and dementia, if you actually look it up, it's type 3 diabetes. We're the only country not to call it what it is. And so a lot of these things we can start to prevent. And when oxygen is deficient, when micronutrients are deficient, when hydration is deficient, and sleep is deficient, fatigue, sickness, and disease is present. Everybody else is telling you that your energy loss is just what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Everyone else is telling you this energy loss is just what it takes to run a family. This energy loss is just what it takes when you get married. I'm here to tell you it's a sign of disease. And we have to take action in order to do it. But what happens is there's so much going on around us. We're being told so many different things. And because we're being told all of these things, we don't know what actions to take. We don't know where to start. And so today, I want to make sure that you start with competence. You're going to leave here with a new understanding of what to do. That competence is going to create clarity in you. the true steps of what does this mean for me. And that clarity creates consistency. And that consistency will increase your confidence, will in turn create the changes that you're yielding, that you're truly, truly looking for. Because at the end of the day, our bodies, we're truly meant to steward whatever our gifting is. We were each born to do something great, something amazing, something world-class. But yet we can't steward what we can't articulate. If we don't understand it, there's no way we can steward it forward. And so there's a great part about this. Your body has a language, and you may or may not have ever heard this, but that language is HRV. Now, I want to tell a little story here. My wife and I, we went on our honeymoon to Vietnam and walked off the plane, walked into the airport. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And we walked in, and I looked at the sign. Couldn't read it. I asked the person a question who was trying to get us to customs. Couldn't speak the language. Immediately, my body started to get frustrated, get overwhelmed, build up a little bit of anxiety. And I know you guys know what that feels like, when you just feel like nobody understands you. Because quite frankly, as entrepreneurs, we live on this island of misfit toys. Not a lot of people in our life understand us. But our body feels the same way about us because we don't understand the language of our body. And so your body feels overwhelmed. Your body feels frustrated. Your body feels anxious. And the way it's communicating that to you is through symptoms, through stomach aches, through headaches, through anxiety, through fatigue. And so when we come over here and we take a look at what HRV truly is, HRV at its core, guys, if you want to follow me over just to these slides here, HRV is a language of how our body is adapting to stress and strain. Okay, and the unique part of this is that whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional, our body has no idea the difference. So you could take a look at a day of back-to-back Zoom calls, and you could go look at somebody who just ran a marathon, and their HRV curve could look the exact same. You could look at somebody who's going through a marital issue, and somebody who's just sold their company, and their HRV curves could look the exact same. Physical, mental, spiritual, emotional stress, our bodies cannot tell the difference, but HRV will ultimately communicate that to us. And so when we take a look here, if you have a higher HRV, basically what we're talking about is the time gaps between our waves. If we look at this, this is an EKG. Okay, an EKG, we see this on Greg's anatomy, beep, 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 beep. And there's time interval differences. We would think if we have a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute, that we divide 60 by 60 seconds, it's 1 beat per second, but that's not how our body operates. Our body's programmed simply to have our heart beat when it has to. And so if we have a higher variance in HRV, a higher variance in time interval, it means we are having a greater adaptation and a higher parasympathetic response. So basically more loosey-goosey, more rested. Thus, we're ready to take on more stress and strain. If we have a lower HRV, it means we have a lesser, or pardon me, a lesser adaptation. That should say lesser. Lesser adaptation to stress, and thus a higher sympathetic activity going on in our body. And we're not as prepared to take on stress and strain. And so when we take a look at this single number, HRV, can ultimately tell us whether we're ready to take on a more stressful workout, whether we're ready to go have back-to-back Zoom calls, or whether we should give ourselves maybe a little bit more time to sleep in today, or maybe we should go and give ourselves a break in the middle of the day to do some type of meditation. And so the unique thing is that you guys have been measuring this pretty much your entire lives if you've been wearing any type of these devices, whether it's Whoop, whether it's Oura, whether it's Fitbit, Apple, Garmin, Polar, you name it. And they all have this very unique piece that's pulling this information. Through all of our research, there's 8 controllables that kind of come back to this. And these 8 controllables are nutrition, exercise, hydration, sleep, mindset, environment, immune function, and self-care. Nothing sexy, nothing outside of the norm that anybody usually talks about. But I want to give you guys this example. If we think about our body and we're like, hey, I wonder why I'm always tired. It's because we've been operating in this space where we aren't allowing ourselves to fill up. If stress is this straw, and I'm going to be pulling out of this straw, we're like, oh, maybe I'll take the afternoon off. Okay, cool. You've got nothing left. You're going to go and have a spa weekend. Okay, cool. I'll put a little bit in the cup, but I'll go right back to the same routines, getting up at the same time. Rich and Laura talked about it at the beginning. You've got soccer practice. You've got your business. You've got your workout. You've got the crazy in-laws you got to deal with. You got the holidays. And you're playing with an empty cup. You're not giving yourself this feedback. And HRV helps us understand that. HRV helps us to dictate how empty our cup is. So I want to give you guys 2 seconds. If you guys have any of these devices, if you have Oura, if you have Whoop, if you have Fitbit, if you have Apple, this is what it looks like when you actually pull it up. And you can start tracking this for yourself on a regular, everyday basis. And there's a median system of values here. And this median system of values, if we start looking at this, ultimately tells us whether we are adapting well to our stress or whether we are not. And the longer that we don't adapt well to our stress, the longer we stay in that space of fake health. And there's a window that happens. There's a window that goes from prevention to the moment that it goes to treatment. And the difference between moving to true health or moving to death and disease is how long you stay with that low HRV. If you look up your numbers and you're in this lower quadrant, it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. Ed Milet's going to come out and talk about the power of one more. How disappointing would it be if you wanted to give one more, but you didn't have what it took to give one more? And the one more that you really wanted to give actually came 20 years too soon. As we move over to this, we start to take a peek at you and your uniqueness, is you are different. Each and every one of you, like I said, was built differently. So often I see people trying to take on the habits and structures of their colleagues, or take on the habits and structures of their spouse, or take on the habit and structures of their best friend that saw the great things that they did. But instead, they just wind up in that same tornado, that same circle, not knowing which direction to go. When my wife and I first started dating, I thought I was going to be a cool guy and rented a boat down in South Florida. And I don't know if you've ever navigated the canals of South Florida, but they're not super easy to get through. And me being a kid from Canada, landlocked, didn't have much boating experience. So we get in the boat and we're driving. And I'm navigating the canals. It's a beautiful day. The girl's in the back. We got music playing. And about an hour in, I start thinking in my head, I'm like, man, we got to be getting close. It's got to be here soon. But guys, you ever know how it feels like when you get more and more lost, you're more and more sure you know exactly where you're going? That was exactly where I was at. I was like, no, I know where I'm going. We're good. And then all of a sudden, I took a final right turn. And it was a dead end, and the water level dropped by about 3 feet. And I turned around and I said, girls, I think we're lost. And one of the girls that was with us goes, oh yeah, I know, you turned the wrong way about 30 minutes ago. And she picks up her phone and she goes, we've got the GPS right here. It was just where you missed that turn back here. And all of a sudden, it was like, that's just like our health. We think that we need to put ourselves at the middle of the wheel. Because as entrepreneurs, we've done that for our entire lives. We've put ourselves at the center of our business. We've put ourselves at the center of our families. We've made all the decisions. We've decided what comes in, what comes out. We've hired our teams. But yet, For us, when it comes to health, we're not the expert there. And we're trying to bring in a certain trainer. We're maybe doing some blood testing. Maybe we're going and getting a DNA test from something we saw randomly online. We're bringing our supplements in that we saw on Instagram. We're grabbing a sauna because our best friend loves it. But ultimately, when you're the center and you're also the pedal stroke, it becomes overwhelming. And your tire is flat. And you're working harder and harder and harder with less and less efficiency, never truly reaching the speed in which we have to go, never truly reaching that potential that's there. And we go around in circles, in circles, in circles. Conversely, when we find ourselves in this true health space, and what true health really means, we have a trusted source at the center, we ultimately can start to determine what testing we need. And it can be fully comprehensive, from DNA, epigenetics, cellular testing. So we can look at your entire being and know exactly what's going on. We can now take HRV and understand, oh, this metric tells me what I need to do today. You can have these customized solutions so that you're not frivolously spending, and you've got this time energy shield around you so that you can focus on what your genius is. And ultimately, you just become the outside of the wheel. You become that pedal. And all of a sudden, you've now blown up your tire, and it's a little bit effortless. You just become the executor. You don't have to figure out what I have to put in and what I don't have to. I love this example where we had two different clients. They were husband and wife, a couple running their business. They actually had a health and wellness company. Had never heard of HRV before, and all of a sudden, they couldn't figure why they were always tired. They had chronic headaches. They weren't sleeping. They were taking supplements. They actually had a supplement company, and they were taking supplements, but they were getting sick all the time. And all of a sudden, I show this example because one of the couples stopped intermittent fasting, the other started. And we see this incline in HRV in both of them. They both started to have a higher level of resiliency. They both started to have better immune functions. They both started to sleep better. They both had more energy. And all of a sudden, they were like, how is that possible? Well, when we come back to this example, intermittent fasting for one was a stressor there was nothing left in the cup, where intermittent fasting for the other actually added to the cup. And so we have to figure out what is filling up your cup. What is your wheel made out of? What's in your wheel? What focus areas have you put in? Who's operating in that? Do you have anybody speaking into that? Or are you trying to drive that? Because when we try to drive it and we try to pull it from a unilateral place, we wind up in that same circle, left and right, and we don't know where we are. And when we don't know where we are, it's a really unique thing, because I'm sure you felt this in your business, especially if you've started. Who just started a business here? Couple people? Who remembers when they first started their business, how difficult it was sometimes to navigate it, and you just needed an expert to tell you exactly what to do? It's the same thing like this. We need to run our bodies like our business. Because at the end of the day, I don't care how great your business is, it's your greatness. You're the visionary. You've got this big mission, this calling inside of you to go do something great. And so, whatever running our business is, we would never go, if we're in the real estate space, we would never go and start buying homes if we didn't know what the market was like, if we didn't know what the potential ROI was. We would never go and start researching single-family homes, but yet then go and buy multifamily properties. We need to look at the data, need to look at the information, need to help understand where we are today to make those decisions. Same thing with our marketing. We'd never frivolously throw money into a marketing campaign if we didn't know the click rate, didn't know the client retention rate, didn't know ultimately the lifelong term value of what the ROI could be. But yet, why don't we do that for our bodies? We're just taking random stabs at things, and yet we wonder why we've never truly felt fully energized. We wonder why we've never truly realized the potential that exists. It is not normal to need a nap in the middle of the afternoon. It is not normal to get sick every 2 months. Flu season is not a thing. It just exists because we haven't fully looked after ourselves in the way to operate at our peak potential. And so when we run our bodies like our business, it breaks down the exact same way. DNA, epigenetics, gut biome testing, understanding our whole being, getting a full comprehensive look at what's going on inside of us. It's just like when we would go and look at an industry. What's happening in the real estate space? What's happening in the marketing space? What's happening in the relationship space? Let's understand what this whole beast looks like. And then our cellular testing, our quarterly blood testing, that becomes our quarterly meetings. And what we know is that ultimately determines our strategies, the tools, the systems, the processes that we put in place. But what happens when we have quarterly meetings? We know we have our quarterly meetings at the end of Q4, but all of a sudden on January 2nd, something's changed and we got to now navigate in a different way in our business. No different than our bodies with HRV, which becomes our daily KPI. And so we have this system that sets up, that allows us to know exactly where we are at any given point in time. I love this last one. This is like one of my favorite examples, not because he saw such a drastic change, but because it encapsulates so much about what happens to each and every one here. He was completely stressed out. He was running a $2 billion company, had built this thing from the ground up. And as a younger person, he was running 3, 4, 5 marathons a year. He was loving life, had all the energy in the world. And all of a sudden, the business started to pull him in, and he started to be less consistent with his habits, less consistent with knowing exactly what he needed to do for himself to show up in the best way possible. He started to drink at night. His wife started to follow the habits. They would go back and forth. And all of a sudden, he found himself in the hospital at the beginning of September. 60 pounds overweight, 100 units of insulin a day, diabetic, had never been a diabetic before in his life. And he came out and he goes, you know what? The one thing I learned is that health is the actual wealth and time is the asset. And we never invest in our health until it impacts the asset. I need to flip that. I need to protect my wealth, which is my health, so that I can ultimately have more time. And as all of a sudden we started to understand what his body needed, create a full wheel for him, he went from using 100 units of insulin a day to 5 units a month. His pancreas magically turned on. He was able to drop 80 pounds in the sense of a year. He's going to go run his second marathon of the year on February 6th. And he's now got his life back again. He's able to lean in and serve his family. He's got 5 kids. And he's able to be there and walk his daughter down the aisle. He's able to be there for his business. That's the life that's rich. That's the life that's full. That's the life that's full of fulfillment. You heard Candy talking about it right before. It's not about the money. It's not about the looks. It's about the quality of life. That's that true health space. It's that true fulfillment to do what we want when we want. And that life exists. I want you to picture yourself waking up in the morning with enough energy to do every single thing that you want to do. I want you to picture your spouse coming up to you and saying, honey, you look happier and more energetic than I've ever seen you before. I want you to picture not having to think so hard about what you have to do every day in order to get to where you want to be. That life exists, and it's one decision away. My wife and I have this on our fridge, and not only does it have our guiding principles for our relationship on it, but right down below has a little chart. You heard Richard and Laura talking about this as well. I know that my wife's love language is physical touch. Mine's word of affirmation. And this little chart, we move throughout the day based on how well we feel the other is filling our cup up. Why do we do that? So I know where she is all the time. I know what she wants it to look like, but I don't always hit that. It's not on purpose, but this way I know where she is all the time. So it's a jog and it's a reminder to me what actions I can take. I can come up and I can give her an extra hug during the day. I can lean over, I can give her a kiss on the cheek. I can come by and say, hey, hun, how are you? As I touch her shoulders. And I see that chart slowly getting bigger, slowly getting higher, slowly moving up. And I want to leave you with this last thought. I know I started with my NHL journey, where I got to, the impact that we had, but that's not where the story really ends. After a decade of working in the National Hockey League, creating a lot of change, revolutionizing the way that things were done, I took a hard look in the mirror and it was awesome. It was awesome. The bright lights, chasing a championship, the private planes, fancy hotels, the media. It was cool. But it was really all about me. It was about my ego. It was about what I could do. And in 2019, I heard loud and clear God say to me, he said, Justin, faithful servant, well done serving the people you wanted to. But it's time to go serve the people that I want you to. People like you, people like me, entrepreneurs, business owners, couplepreneurs, people who have stepped into their God-given calling, stepped into something that's uncomfortable, stepped into something that they, and when they know they're built to be great at this, they feel like they have to trade something for their mission. They feel like they've had to trade their health for their calling. And I'm here to tell you that it's just not true. You can have your health and a successful business. You can own your health and have a great marriage. You can own your health and have a connected family. You can own your health and live a life by design. You can own your health, but it starts with choosing different. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.